Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me as always, I have the holiest of holies. I have the Reverend Tracy. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I like that we had like a weird bout of cold weather, and then now it's just like yay actual spring. Like we still managed to have a fall spring that I thought we didn't have, but now it's gorgeous. My wall is blank behind me. I'm slowly but surely getting my house packed up because we move and selling things off. And I don't know, do you ever get like emotional when you sell things that you have memories to?
It depends. I mean, like I'm literally the type of guy, like when I moved in with a professor, I had like a bag of stuff. So that's my mindset. But having said that, if it was something like a personal memento type of deal, I get that, you know. I mean, my grandma was a hoarder, so.
Oh, see, and my mom too, which is why, yeah, when I moved from Arizona to Portland, it was me and two like carry-on size bags, but I had to check one of them because you can only carry on one carry-on.
Right.
So yeah, I was like me and two carry-on bags, but no, it's like I got rid. Don't even want to say got rid of it. It's such a good bag, but I got rid of one of my sold one of my backpacks, the one that I took up like St. Helens and Hood, and had been on numerous like backpacking trips with the Mr. Reverend and my stepkids. So it was interesting that tugged at my heartstrings unexpectedly whenever I sold that this week. How are you doing?
I am doing good. Yesterday, as I mentioned on our Wednesday show, I got my first dose of the vaccine, and that was quite the interesting experience. Ended up getting it at the convention center downtown, and it was, I will say this, as annoying as it was to be there, they did make it a fast experience in terms of getting people in and out of there. I think some people are still a little too comfortable being close to other people, and that, with all the people that were there, that could make it, that made it a little edgy on times, but I got the vaccine. That's good. I do feel like crap today, though.
Oh, just wait, because this was shot one. Is it Pfizer or Moderna?
The Pfizer one, yeah.
Gotcha. So I had gotten, I don't remember, did I talk about actually getting my first dose too much on here? Or did we just kind of like totally blow over that?
I don't seem to recall it. Now that may be the weed talking, but fill us in.
Oh, yeah. So I've just got my second one actually on Monday, but going rewind in time back to my first one, I got to go because President Biden signed some things and made it so that the spouses and caregivers of our veterans who are getting, health care through the VA, that we could get the vaccine through the VA, which is just excellent. Because I've been there, a few times with the Mr. Reverend, and I've always enjoyed the conversations with the veterans that I've had there. I speak their language, I feel like they're kind of my people in a sense. I usually have a good conversation or two, and so I just loved being able to go and get the vaccine there. And it was really kind of interesting because, I may have mentioned once or twice that I struggle with certain like mental things sometimes in some situations. And so in hospitals is not necessarily like when I am my happiest in general. And right. There was, and the VA, you get kind of an interesting variety of people, and a lot of times you get people who just want somebody to talk to. And normally I'm totally fine with that, but when you're in line for your vaccine during a pandemic, you kind of want people to give you your space. And I was not handling that well. But what was kind of neat about it was being at the VA. They are very in tune to when somebody is displaying being triggered. And I didn't really put it together until I had left. But I don't want to say that, they were a nurse or a doctor, because I don't know. I was kind of having a moment at the time. Right. But they handled me really well. And I put together after the fact that, they talked to me a little bit longer. They explained the next steps in a little bit more detail. So it was really kind of cool to have that experience, because in most hospital or clinic situations, I'm usually treated like I'm just being difficult. So it was really a pleasant experience in that sense. So I went in, got my shot, no biggie. Fast forward, they scheduled me right away, which was cool. Like I knew when my second appointment was. I've had some friends who've had some real struggle with getting that second appointment, nailed in. Just a few, but I guess a lot of places are scheduling you for your second one. The VA definitely did that for me. I went back. It was a much less, like, the line was nothing. It was much smoother than the time where, I felt like I was being crowded and getting a little claustrophobic. But yeah, so I went. My first shot, I just had like a little bit of a headache, kind of, not like a full-blown migraine or anything, just kind of a headache and some grogginess. I did get a migraine like 2 or 3 days later, and I suspect it had something to do with it. But other than that, it was basically nothing.
Yeah.
Well, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, for folks out there that have not taken it yet, for like a majority of the people that I know have mentioned something occurring. Like, the professor mentioned, she had soreness in the arm. I have soreness in the arm right now. And and like right now, like I feel like shit, but it's not that bad, I guess I should say. It just feels like it's that feeling you get just before, like, you get the flu, just of your body, just like, something's up.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's what I mean. Just that body, like, you're walking through egg drop soup somehow, just drag-ass feeling. That was definitely me day after my first shot. And so I go, and nobody, like, did they have you sit for 15 minutes after your shot? I don't know. Okay, so that is everywhere. So Tim's nodding for anybody listening. But, so I was sitting for my 15 minutes after my second one, and there was some dude there that was having a reaction. I guess he was getting a rather alarming rash on his arm. Right. And so what was interesting is I think he was more scared of them hooking him up to the monitoring machine than he was of actually having any symptoms. Like, he said he felt fine. And, they're reading him his stats. They've got his finger, like, with the pulse oximeter, and he's all hooked up now, which nobody else is. So I'm sure that's making his blood pressure stay totally calm. Yeah. And, oh, man. So, I mean, that was interesting. He seemed okay. I went home. I slept kind of through the night. This was definitely rougher than the first shot. I will preface my story for, recovering from shot 2 with, I have had the flu one time before. And this was nowhere near as bad as that. Like, going back in time when I got the flu back when I worked in a pharmacy, I probably should have gone to the hospital because I wasn't able to walk. Like, it was horrible. Yeah.
That's a little extreme.
Our college solution, just side note, with me and my roommates, was just to let me borrow my roommate's wheelie desk chair, and I just wheeled my body through the house for 2 days. Like, nah, don't go to the hospital. Just do that. That's right. That's
American exceptionalism at its best.
So, anywho, my sleep was just not that good. It's kind of interesting because I've got a Garmin and it tracks like the whole body battery thing, which just rates a bunch of like pulse changes within so many minutes. Can indicate.
Didn't you
stress.
post a picture of the readings one night?
Yes, I'll totally share that. Like, since we're talking about it now, but so basically, my body battery usually I do have sleep disturbance, but I've gotten some techniques down to get back to sleep really well. So even though I wake up, I still like charge my body battery all the way. I'm like usually starting in the 90s or 100% body battery. And then I got the shot, and I woke up to it being like in the 70s, which is like not the worst in the world, but still not what I'm used to, right? Like, significant difference in how my body quote unquote recharged overnight. And because it also measures like how well you sleep. It's an average of a bunch of statistics it gets from being a smartwatch, right? That's what you're getting with some of this technology. So as the day progresses, I swear, I promise, like, I know I am not good at resting and relaxing when I am sick. I will admit to being bad about it, but I promise I really was a good kid. Like, the biggest thing I did, I think, was I took out the dishes and I went on like a few walks just to move and be outside, and be away from people, because I had a fever, but it was explained by having the shot, but still way, way far away from people. But yeah, like, and my body battery reading just kept nose diving, and it kept updating the message because it tries, Garmin tries to help you by giving you advice based on these readings. It's like, hey, you should find time to rest today at one point. And then later, like, it was 4:00 in the afternoon, and my body battery had just plummeted to a 5. Like, and I felt like ripe shit. Like, I wasn't nauseous. So that was the one thing is I hate being nauseous. So that is the one symptom I'm just super glad I didn't get. But my hips were just, they started aching, and then it was just all of my joints started aching. And then I had like the weird skin sensitivity. So like with the flu, how you can get aching joints and skin sensitivity, those were the two things I got. And that arm hurt like none other. Like at one point I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was just so I can windmill my arm around, just to kind of get it to move and get it to just feel a little bit better. But yeah, 4:00 in the afternoon, my body battery was down to a whopping 5, and the little note said, "You should go to bed soon."
Yeah, I mean, luckily I'm not at that point, but maybe it's just the microchip hasn't implanted to the brainstem yet. I don't know, but after that implants, then we'll see how I feel after that. But
and the second one, of course, because this isn't a one dose that you had, so you've got your follow-up appointment, right?
Yes, for anybody in the Portland area, if you do have it at the convention center, or to Tracy's point, anywhere you go, it should be standard that they should automatically schedule you for the second appointment. If not there when they give you the shot, they may be able to do that when you set it up, like on Walgreens, for instance. I think if you schedule an appointment there, it schedules the second one when you schedule the first one too. Mm-hmm. So it's please get the shot. Everybody wants to get back to some semblance of normal here, and the quickest way we're going to do that is by listening to health experts, and that's getting a shot, wearing masks, I want to watch movies again. I want to go to the movies, and
yeah, it's like I didn't choose that to be my expertise in life. I did not choose to go and become an immunologist, but we do have some really good immunologists who get no money from us getting this vaccine. Like, we're not paying for it. But yeah,
Actually, you're incorrect on that. And that's actually causing a problem overseas, because due to when everything was put into place by the Trump administration to start research on the vaccines and whatnot, the company, like the Pfizer vaccine, they own the copyright to that vaccine, and legally, thanks to stuff Trump put into paperwork on that, they are not allowing other countries to use this, because it would be against their patent, and apparently they would lose money. So people in India now are dying in droves. It is a humanitarian crisis in India, just simply because American pharmaceutical companies don't want to let their patents to have any sort of a waiver, so people can just quickly make some medicine and go from there. They want to make money.
So, question. The immunologists, though, are they getting any kickback or money from this?
No.
Okay, that's what I meant. I meant like the sources of people to listen to, of should you get it or not, should you be wearing a mask or not. Like, it goes back to the trust your resources thing. So yeah, if they were getting some kind of money from Pfizer, I would totally be eating my words right now. But to clarify, what I meant was, I'm not paying these immunologists. The immunologists are not getting money for this, to my knowledge. That is, I mean, please continue if you wanted to keep talking about that. I just wanted to at least clarify, I just meant like the people that are saying, experts, like that we should maybe be looking to for advice on how to help stop this, aren't directly benefiting from us getting the vaccine, other than like humanity doing well. That's how they benefit from us getting the vaccine, I guess.
Well, and when it comes to that, if it came out that Dr. Fauci had regular payments by the Pfizer Corporation given to him, imagine what that scandal would be. I think there are laws in place that would kind of prevent that from happening. So yeah, to your point, medical officials, listen to what they say. Don't believe memes on Facebook. Don't listen to talking points on media that are against this. This is not a political point. This is a health point. If you do not listen, you are going to, if not have negative health issues yourself, or face potential death yourself over this, you're putting other people in danger.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got your expertise in whatever it is your expertise in that immunologist knows jack shit about. But unless you've studied and really understand like all of the effects and da da da, like I just don't understand why you would go with somebody who's not an expert in the field. But that's just an IMHO on how I select who I listen to, because it's a big topic. Like, hey, are you getting this shot? If you are, how do you feel about it? If you're not, why are you not getting it? And it's another just almost it's been driven to a point of being politicized again, where it's almost like the frickin' 2016 election conversation all over again. It's just really heated. It's making families not speak to each other anymore. Like, it is amazing how little it takes to spark the same fight over and over that ends up just being about like an issue, but it ends up kind of causing all these rifts and fights and division amongst people and friends and family. So it's been a topic for me lately for sure.
Actually, the professor and I kind of spoke about that a little bit on this past Wednesday show, the one we had to pull out of a hat because of a technical recording during the Life Force recording. But, back in 1996, Bill Clinton signed into a law, a Federal Communications Act bill that allowed companies to own more than one communications, so they can own all the radio stations they wanted or all the TV stations that they wanted. In the past, it was they only kept it to where you could only buy like an X amount within a region to prevent like what we're seeing now. And now we're looking at like literally 3 to 4 companies that own all of the news organizations out there. And look at news is a business. And as a business, they are giving you a product and they want you to continue to use that product. So they are going to use whatever trick they can to do that. And normally that involves the past, decade at least, if not longer, they've been just stoking the fires of tribalism. The whole, like on the conservative side of things, it's all the Democrats are evil. They're killing babies and drinking their blood. And I'm not being facetious. That is the argument of some of these people. And then, of course, you have the progressives that are arguing that every single person who proclaims to be a conservative is somehow evil. And again, absolute statements, as we said many, many times, it's simply not true. And it's, it's like, what do we do to solve that? I mean, it's like in the past, what kind of started snowballing all this was in the 80s. Have you ever heard of the Fairness Doctrine?
No.
That was an act that was in place. It was a law that stated that if there is a news segment that primarily features talking from one point of view, you must give equal time to the opposite point of view. And President Ronald Reagan, the guy who, when he was governor of California, pardoned country music singer Spade Cooley. Spade Cooley was in jail for brutally murdering his wife in front of his daughter. But yeah, that Ronald Reagan, when he, I know I'm using a bad faith argument there, I know, but we're learning about that in class this week, and I sent you a video about that. But he rescinded the Fairness Doctrine, which directly created stuff like conservative talk radio. Because like within a year of that happening, guess who hit the airwaves nationally? Rush Limbaugh, and we all know what happened after that. To me, I think we may need to investigate whether we bring something like that back. It's because clearly when you have, news organizations that are, blatantly giving false information about a pandemic, information that if followed could put plenty of people in danger, if not kill them. It's just like, where do you start the regulating process? Because if that is not an example of somebody like going into a movie theater and yelling fire, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and it honestly kind of seems like it wouldn't be the worst response in the world to this whole fake news thing that we just experienced and how much that can affect things. Like, maybe that wasn't necessarily the best idea to take it away, because then you're only hearing a one-sided argument. You know what I mean? Whereas if at least if you trust the person and the people who put together whatever news show you prefer, won't name names, literally any one of them, right? I'm going to trust the news source that I prefer and the guests that they try to bring on from the opposite side better than, trying to go and listen to a news source that I don't feel like I can trust so that I can get something from the opposite side. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's an IMHO opinion of mine right now that I think I just formed live with you guys, that I would be very, very for seeing something like that come back. And as always, if you guys have any input on actually, here's maybe a reason that's bad, always open to hearing it. But to me, it seems like a very reasonable way to respond to what we've been through.
Yeah, I mean the potential drawback would be something like Hannity, for instance, is notorious for having somebody from the progressive side, but it's always somebody you never heard of, and it's always someone who's essentially they just graduated college and are not as articulate on any particular topic as someone who may be working as a correspondent with a different network or something like that. So there's still going to be there would still be human error involved in that, but I would think that would be one way to kind of have some balance, force some balance without there being regulation, because we do have to be careful of, we don't want a situation to where the government just says something, says the entirety of Fox News is bad and must go away. I mean, because we have to worry about the First Amendment too, and I think it's worked in the past. There are ways to do this that allow people the freedom to relay the news and not. But that's another thing we talked about in class too. It's there is a difference between slant and bias. You can listen to somebody who has a conservative slant, but they can still be telling you the truth. You may not necessarily agree with them, but they are principled. For example, someone like Chris Wallace, who does Fox News Sunday, is generally someone I actually trust, because routinely he's putting questions to people that are not expecting those types of questions on Fox News, and he's putting feet to the fire. You can respect that, but what you gotta kind of look out for is bias, and that's what I think more people should be kind of tuning in on. What is their and by bias I just mean they're presenting it in such a way that you exactly where they're at. It's not the same as knowing a particular reporter may have voted for a Republican at some point. They are framing the article or the news story that they are doing with obvious bias. For example, there was a Daily Caller article I read today where they said someone in Minneapolis was fined $12 million for burning down a police building as part of, in quotations, mostly peaceful protest. And it's just where they're standing. They're not being honest with that reporting and stuff like that. That is a clear instance of bias, whereas other sites, you can definitely see their slant, but they're not lying to you, essentially, by using little tricks to get you to think in a certain way.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I have that natural thirst for trying to get people that bring on respectable humans from both sides. I'm pretty sure I've already talked on here before. I do listen to OPB and NPR and stuff like that because, sure. There are some times that they hit me at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's very much the headline type guilt. They have the headline grabber guilt too. I will totally say that about them. They do it as well. Mm-hmm. Emotionally driven headlines that are designed to make you click on it, right? But but I do give them credit, because when they do get two humans together, they don't intentionally get one very well spoken on the side that they support and then one that's a buffoon or somebody that's easy to fluster or things like that. They do genuinely tend to, but I don't know. I guess you can't really make that happen across the board, because that's up to you as the shopper. I guess I just wish people were naturally drawn to want that more, because then this wouldn't even have to be a conversation. To want to seek out that calm conversation to make decisions instead of picking at emotions and eliciting people there.
Yeah, because like an interesting point that I read in school this week is that when you have people being told for years that talking about religion and politics in the workplace is not a good thing, what you are ultimately teaching them in the long run is to not have these conversations. So when people do in real life, it gets contentious. You can have an argument with somebody about these type of topics in a respectful, constructive way without, at the end of the conversation, having your mind changed necessarily. If I'm going to talk to a conservative person about immigration policy, I can guarantee that at the end of the conversation, there's probably not going to be much they can say to change my mind. But if I'm respectful for one, and two, argue appropriately and not, hyperbolically or anything like that, then maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can get some insight. Maybe that can be a time to where when you get two heads that are, in different areas together, maybe compromise. Oh my goodness. How would that be a bad thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. That's really all I can say. That's just such a yeah statement. Like, I don't understand the sinking into the high emotional where you're just yelling at each other, and at that point you're so worked up that you don't want to be even sounding anything close to sounding like that you could change your mind. Like, it's really interesting to me. It's one of those areas that you're just expected to believe everything that you're ever going to believe from the beginning of getting into it. And if you change your mind, well, then you're a flip-flopper. Like, there's no room for evolution or hearing an argument. Like, you are definitely expected not to change. And that even goes with religion. That goes with politics. That goes with even raising kids. Oh my gosh. Like, some of that's the topic. But, and it's like, I just kind of wish we had a culture that's a little bit more open to talking about things and having discussions, because is that not how we get better at things? Like, as humans, we crowdsource. I mean, God, you can go online and find out like 8 different ways to make oatmeal bars, because like we crowdsource so much with other things, but people are so afraid to kind of talk and open up certain other conversations. Granted, that's a really ridiculous, like an almost hyper, like just being silly level of comparison. Oatmeal bars is not near to the level of like life or death that some people feel like religion is, but
yeah, but still, yeah. I mean, the fact that we do have this fear, and a lot of it is, in my opinion, thanks to stuff like social media. I mean, we've talked about it before, how the algorithms are in place on no matter what. So, God damn it, on whatever social media outlet you're using, they're in place to, again, like news organizations, keep you engaged and keep you on their platform. And it's great if they can do that with cat memes, but most of the time it's through negativity. It's about people bickering about a movie coming out. It's about people goofing on a silly celebrity. It's about people going into tribalism fights about, just what's happening in government when, there are a lot of problems that that need to be addressed in this country. And it's, after listening to the president's speech last night in front of Congress, it's I'm thinking hopefully we have people that kind of see that we do need to make some change, whether it's infrastructure change, start actually using the government to build up the middle class and the poor again, invest in education purposes there or what. But do we how do we add stuff like news on there, because that does need to be addressed, again, with stuff like Fox News propagating coronavirus misinformation. I mean, like, how does that get addressed? It needs to be addressed, because they endangered lives. Yeah.
I didn't see the president talk. So.
Yeah. For as far as the talk, I won't go into in depth on that, but he basically proposed new legislation that, if it were enacted as it proposed, it would do stuff like community college. 2 years of community college would be free for everybody, and just other like investments in like broadband internet for rural areas, kind of shoring that up. He wants like $80 billion moved over to the IRS, so they actually have the resources to go after rich people who are avoiding their taxes, because currently it's easier for a rich person to screw off on their taxes than a poor person, because it's easier to go after a poor person because they don't have money for lawyers that can fight it over long periods of time. And, if we do stuff like that, then that will definitely make things more fair, and also raise the tax rate on the uber rich, and not, fall for stuff like Republicans want to get rid of like the inheritance tax, for instance, which would, essentially allow like works of art, for instance, to be transferred from generation to generation without having to pay that tax. That work of art could, go from like $100,000 painting to like a $5 million painting, and that's pure profit for the rich people. But typically that's something that would be taxed, and so there was a lot of good that he proposed. We'll just see what Congress can actually get done.
Yeah. I mean, I try to be, optimistic when it comes to these things. I'm hoping for some good turnaround. I saw so many alerts that he was talking yesterday, and I just did not muster the emotional energy to go and watch it. I just gotten my shot and recovering and everything, and I was like, yep, I'm actively not watching it. I feel like such a bad kid.
Well, people ended up, if you did watch it, you got a chance to make fun of Ted Cruz. Because that's easy to do, but he, I guess, at one point looked like he was sleeping, and just that became cannon fodder on Twitter.
Oh man.
I mean, he's one if there is anything I support, it's publicly mocking Ted Cruz until the day he dies. He needs to be ashamed for existing, because a person like him is just absolutely disgusting. No morals whatsoever. He's just disgusting. He's a disgusting human being. Him and his entire family.
See, and I try so hard not to like pretend like I know people based on whatever public persona, whatever they're being to be a politician, or whatever they're being to be whatever person they are. But yeah. I'm not going to defend him. I won't openly like hope for anything horrible to happen, really hardly to anybody.
Oh, no. To be clear, I would never want anything to happen to any, for a Republican politician that just simply supported Donald Trump and didn't do things like be actively involved in the insurrection. All I wanted was just for them to be publicly shunned. I don't wish any sort of violence. It's like the morons on Twitter that made a video in town here with masks on, doxing and threatening Mayor Ted Wheeler. I've made it no secret that I think Ted Wheeler is a loathsome human being, but I just want him recalled from office, which totalrecallpdx.com. Go to that website. You can find out how you can get Ted Wheeler out of office starting this July. But again, Ted Wheeler needs to be dealt with appropriately at the ballot box or through a recall effort. When you are making videos and giving his home address and threatening stuff like blood will be shed, that's not helping anybody. And to be clear, I don't think people should have to defend themselves against the minority of their group. I don't like Ted Wheeler. Those people don't like Ted Wheeler. They don't speak for me, but it's important that when something like that occurs, that I stand up and say that even though I think Ted Wheeler's a disgusting human being, he does not deserve to be threatened. His physical well-being, he should not be threatened or hurt or anything like that for doing his job. You handle that in the ballot box.
Maybe just do a different job. That's what is being asked for. Like, maybe he can go and just do something different now. And that's the thing. That's how voting works. If it's a publicly held office and enough people say, hey, I think you're shit at your job, well, then you vote. And that's how you speak for things like that, because that is our right.
That is, but think about what's happening in California right now. California, they have initiated recall election for the current governor, Gavin Newsom there, and it's kind of bringing back memories of what brought Arnold Schwarzenegger into office as governor. California has this weird law with as many people that live there, only 12% of the population needs to sign a petition to be able to get a recall election on the ballot, which, you know, there are probably that many QAnon supporters in California to be able to get it no matter what. And it's what I don't like about recall processes. It's with something like this or something like a few years back with Scott Walker, is that unless we are talking about someone in office who did a crime, if the only reason you want to do a recall is that they were doing their job and they did something you did not like, that is not helping anything. A recall or a removal or impeachment from office is, in my opinion, supposed to only be there for people that really abuse the office. Someone is not abusing the office by doing their job, but just doing something that you would not do if you were in their place.
Right. Big difference between the two. That is fair.
Yes. So.
But then when you do see these elections come up, you know, recall elections, special elections. See, we can even transfer over into something. I mean, we've got other things I think we want to talk about too. But you know, that's where it's time to actually get involved. Is you know, and that's something I've appreciated about being in Oregon. I have to figure out how these things work when I get to Maine, because man, have I been spoiled with just I forgot that I signed up for texting. So that I would know that my ballot, you know, got received and everything, like back when I voted in November. And so it was really funny that I just got a text like, "Hey, we're just letting you know that we've already mailed out your ballot for the special election. Don't forget to do that. Your ballot mailed out. That's gone its way to you, person." And those are the things I'm going to have to try to figure out in Maine, because, man, have I been spoiled here with that.
Yeah, and Maine is a unique beast. I mean, for the most part, my understanding is that it is conservative, but like Susan Collins is the senator from Maine, and if that is the level of conservative, that would be okay with me, even though they did have a governor there for a while. I think Wayne LePage or something like that. It was just a loathsome human being. But I know John Oliver would always bring up clips from the governor just running his mouth and doing stuff. But it's not like going to like Mississippi or something like that. So more on the conservative side. But you got Stephen King there, so it can't be that conservative.
Well, I mean, I just did a quick little Google search just to see if I had anything to add through that. I just immediately brought up this, the Maine Beacon. Maine is the nation's whitest, most rural state that doesn't vote Republican, was the headline there. So I was just, because, yeah, I don't know. I know a lot, it's kind of on par with here. It's not super religious there. It's a lot of atheists, a lot of agnostics live there. I think even like the per capita rate was a little bit higher than here. And then there's a lot of white folks. I did remember reading at one point, like it's a lot of white honkies. So I got to get used to that. But hey, you know what? They also do like the reenactments. So I might try to get into that for gig stuff, like as I'm slowly kind of starting to learn what's going on in the area.
There you go.
But yeah, we had looked up some stuff about that because, you know, religiously speaking, we just kind of like to know what our surrounding area, what the temperature is. What's super funny is I know I've mentioned that I intend to try to put together a 5-year plan to open a vegan cafe. And there's this app called Happy Cow. Just a total digression for our listeners, I guess. And if you don't know what it is, it's Yelp, but very specific to vegan and vegetarian diet. So, you know, you've got like the little green 2 leaves, and that means it's a strictly vegan place. If it's green in 1 leaf, it's a vegetarian place. And then if it's like, you know, red with 1 leaf, it's like, oh, there's options, which means like, enjoy your French fries and broccoli. Go ahead. I was going to say, that's totally a thing, and I've experienced that before. Like, I showed, I was like, yes, you've got vegan or vegetarian options? Like, yep, broccoli. You can have broccoli.
As a kid, when I would go to my dad's house on the weekends, that's when he was a Seventh-day Adventist, and briefly talked about it. They have kind of roots with health aspects with John Harvey Kellogg, the guy who created cornflakes and all that stuff, or his brother did, but based on his recipe. I saw the show too, the food that built America, but
oh, so good.
Yeah, but oh god, what was my point? God, it slipped my mind.
It's not 420 anymore, Tim. You have no excuse for this.
Yeah, no. No, what were we talking about again? I will remind you once you bring it up. So I was talking about. What were you talking about?
We were talking about vegetarian options and how it's like, here, enjoy your French fries.
That's right. Yes. Okay. In the 80s, he was trying to be a vegetarian, just like other Seventh-day Adventists, and we would go into Burger King in the 80s, and he would ask for a vegetarian Whopper, and a vegetarian Whopper in the 80s was buns, mustard and ketchup, and lettuce and tomato, and that was it. That was a vegetarian Whopper at the time.
That's not good. That's gross. I mean, I just really shouldn't say it's gross, because it's really, and if you had cheese on there, because that's vegetarian if you do dairy, but like, I do love how many options there are now. Like, now it literally is just like, well, our sauces have, we don't know in them, but at least the patty is Beyond Beef. Like, oh, they're trying. Like the whole thing with the Burger King Impossible, like, oh, we never said it was vegan, we just said it was a vegan patty, because people got really mad. And then my favorite is, I did try it, and they actually asked me, would you like bacon on that? I'm like, got it. You are not pitching this as a vegetarian option. This is just you missed beef when we got scared that we wouldn't have beef anymore option, and now they're just trying to sell this burger. But anyway, like, looking at that, I found out there's like one vegan restaurant in the area. But see, now I kind of want to look into this a little bit more, because just clicking through, a little bit of Googling there, I'd found a political ideology by state, and it's showing that they're actually pretty even split, but it's showing like a 2014 thing. But now I am actually curious, because it has like 34% conservative, 33% moderate, and 30% liberal, and I'm like, I'm moving to my forever home, guys. Like, I found it. I found the even split. But like I said, it says 2014 at the top, so I almost wouldn't even think that's the same anymore. Not after these last 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, keep in mind though too. I mean, that area of the country is normally a little more. If it's not, it would not be straight Republican. It would be more purple, if anything else. Because like Mitt Romney, for instance, used to be governor of Massachusetts in that area, and for a Republican to be elected governor at that point, he's not going to be what a typical Republican would be. So, if I would have no problem living in that area of the country myself, because I don't think there would be too much extreme tribalism going on as much. Cross fingers, hopefully, but
what's cool is I'll be reporting from there in just like 2 months or so, and so you'll get to know, and maybe sometime you can come out and visit me.
There we go.
See, it'll be a fun time.
Yep. Now, in the meantime, you have been quite busy with the Hero Circle.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because it was something I didn't even really think to mention when we did our recording last week. But this past Sunday, the 25th, was, to be fair, there's like a dozen, there's an awareness day every day. Like, every day is basically an awareness day for something, right? Mm-hmm. And probably any given day is like multiples at this point, because there's just so much. But for the 25th of April, that is Parental Alienation Awareness Day. And so there was actually a really big panel event that happened on the 25th that, was hosted by Victim to Hero, which is, one that I'm kind of working a little bit more with, in general. At least that's where I got introduced to even getting involved in doing the Hero Circle, was by getting in contact with Victim to Hero. But they hosted a really great panel where they brought in people from all sorts of organizations, awareness movements, and nonprofits, and just kind of talked about, it was a solution-focused conversation, like what we felt could help end this from happening, reduce it from happening, whatever you want to say it. So that was really cool. We went on, we were supposed to be on at 11:30, but it got, pushed a little bit because technical issues, and of course, because everything's virtual and everybody's trying to get like on this one Zoom call, like at the right time, right?
Right.
So did that, and that was actually the day after I hosted my first survivors panel, where I did some interviewed other, adults like myself who were alienated from a parent, sometimes both parents. I'm coming to learn like some of the interesting swell of the complication of this issue. But so that was really cool too. And then that's basically it. It was a lot of energy going up to that. And of course I was just like really flippin' nervous because naturally, if I don't know exactly every scripted moment of something, I'm going to be a little nervous about it. But I think I did well. I felt like I did well in the end.
You did. I didn't watch the entire thing, but I did watch some of it. I did notice the smile on your face did kind of look like a deer in headlights. Like, I'm so nervous. I hope they don't notice.
Oh, yes. But I think as I do more stuff, it's just going to get easier for me.
Like
because
anything public-wise, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to realize a lot of my speaking, sure, it's public speaking, but I'm in a character. Whereas this is that situation where you don't want to be in a character, because when you're trying to raise awareness for something you've been through, that's when you kind of require being a little bit more your raw self. So it is kind of interesting, like getting my head around doing that instead of something where I can kind of prepare my sass and prepare how I'm going to be because there's a character. Meanwhile, it's like, oh, no pressure in being yourself on any form of public speaking stage. No pressure. I mean, I think I had like kind of a good head start with it anyway, because that was a compliment I'd gotten from one of my friends whenever I had done stand-up a few times with them, was that, not a lot of comedians get up there and it's like the same person that you like are drinking your beer with or hanging out with or whatever. And he had said like, yeah, it's like you're still you on stage, which he's like, that's a really cool thing because that's not the case. And I hadn't even thought about it because I was like, wait, yeah, because I've seen you do stand up and you're way not the same human as you are when you're on stage. But this is one of those situations where I'm learning and I'm adapting. And it's going well, I think. I've actually got podcast interviews that are starting to be set up with that. So I might share those in the group for anybody interested. I don't want to turn Friends Talking Nerdy into the Reverend talking about her her organization stuff. So, but it was good times.
Yeah, well, remember we got the website too, and you have the option of throwing stuff up there for that. But definitely throw it up so people can definitely check it out. I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, do you want to talk about the election?
Oh, yes. Let's talk. We kind of talked about this really cool thing about living in Oregon before, and that is I got this really cool voters pamphlet the other day. Yes. And it was nice because this is the stuff that I felt like I always missed, because I was definitely one of those kids that I was like, okay, well, I vote once every 4 years. Like I was one of those for a long time, and
well, so same here. Yeah, I'm not throwing stones. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think with Rock the Vote, and how much they pitched about it, that they would have told us about all of them, but they just told us about the main one. So I love it because it's really kind of made me more aware as somebody who does like to participate in these things, because I don't recall ever even getting voters pamphlets like really on the regular. Like I think you kind of had to go out of your way to get that information. But so we've got this cool Multnomah County elections, special district elections that we wanted to at least gush about for a minute, I suppose, and reckon. Yes,
and kind of talk about the slight differences too, because even in you have one city in Portland, different neighborhoods apparently have different voting things that they're talking about. But and we've talked about this before. Yeah, it's just the reason we are doing this is we want to do our part to encourage people to stay active, because the reason we got the last 4 years is that we were not active. We slept on our laurels, and a lot of people thought in 2016, myself included, that there's no way that they would vote for him. Come on, and look what happened. When you have a misinformed
Sorry. I just hit the wrong button first. I've been so sneaky about it up until then. Okay, so before we get into the special election, I'm so sorry. Let me explain what just happened. So in Portland, we have an issue with black ants, and as my partner and I are spinning up to move, obviously things are changing, and we've kind of noticed we've had a lot of ants out hunting. And I do consider myself to be a Buddhist human, and I do try not to needlessly kill things. So then what I realized is I've got this little Bissell guy, so I can suck them up when I see them. So I've actually been doing that and then walking this canister way far away and dumping them out. I'm sure they might end up dead anyway, but I don't know. I haven't looked into that much anatomy of an ant. I pretty much think that they make the core of our earth. That's my belief, my personal belief, is that we just live on a core of ants. So anyway, I'm not going to make the insensitive ass joke that I made in private, because I have learned that sometimes my jokes aren't taken well when you don't know me as a full human. But I will say that I do kind of feel like I am these ants' alien experience. Because think about it, suddenly there was this thing hovering over me, and then it sucked me up into it, and I was just in this vessel, and I don't know how long I was there. And then suddenly I was released into the backyard.
And that only seems to happen in very rural areas anyway, so your ants are rednecks.
Oh, probably, y'all. I mean, oh my gosh, it just takes me back to that SNL skit with Kate McKinnon, and it just makes me die inside when I think about it. When they did you see that? It was Ryan Gosling. No. Oh, okay. I got to share that one, because it's the best. Kate McKinnon breaks pretty much.
And you are frozen.
I should be back. Am I back?
You are back, but it's slight. Froze for a second in midair. Yeah.
Where should I backtrack to? Just.
You were just talking about Kate McKinnon.
Oh, okay. So Kate McKinnon. So what they are is they are interviewing these 3 people who have survived being abducted by aliens. And two of them are all oh, it was just like this gorgeous beam of light, and I was embraced by love. And Kate McKinnon is got a cigarette hanging out her mouth and got her beer. And she's well, that ain't the kind of party I had. And it is just so flippin' funny. She breaks everybody, and they actually came together a long time afterwards and did kind of a callback to it. They got Ryan Gosling back on, and they did the same skit with the same type of premise. And
Saturday Night Live's never done that.
But this one, they didn't actually repeat this one time and time, though. It was just kind of this one thing they did with Ryan Gosling on there, and then they did it again when he came back years later. So
yeah.
Lots of payout. So yes, I have been abducting the ants in my apartment and sending them outside.
It reminds me of that Bill Hicks bit where he talked about playing the comedy pouch in Possum Ridge, Arkansas, and audience members told him that they had aliens visit their town, and that they came to the alien they came to the spot where the aliens supposedly were armed, and he said, well, why did you come armed? And they said because they don't we don't want them to abduct us. And he's like, what, and leave all this? He's like, if I lived in this town, I'd be praying for abduction every day. Greyhound, abduct me.
Nice. But anyways, so back to what we were actually trying to talk about before I fucked up my mute button. Because that's what happened, is my brain went, turn off the vacuum, then unmute your mic. And my brain went, what's that? Unmute mic and then turn off vacuum? So.
Yay! Yeah. And there go more ants. All right.
More ants. More in the vessel. But anyway, sorry, I'm just being frustrated.
All right. Now, what we wanted to do is kind of go through the ballots here. Now, obviously, if you don't live in Portland, Oregon, some of this may not mean jack squat to you, but we are doing this as a way to kind of encourage the folks that listen to this to vote. So if you live outside of Portland and this does not apply to you, there is comparable information to look for, even if it's a matter of going to, the websites of the candidates in your area. The only way we are going to be able to affect any sort of long-term change is if we all fight for it. We can't rest on our laurels, and that means voting each and every election. So wanted to go through the ballots here, give some quick thoughts.
Yeah, and like a lot of it might just be a little bit more skimming over it. I know there's a little bit more that, Tim had read of. I felt like one looked like, hey, you can vote for a younger version of Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know if you have that same person, but the first one that I've got is the director position 2 for Multnomah Education Services. And see, so just to talk about like kind of the narrative that I get with some of my friends on this stuff, and also a side note, if you didn't get stuff like this is totally that time of year. You can totally go check and just make sure if you're having any sort of special elections around this. But so education stuff, like I do hear a lot of friends, like particularly, in my age group that don't have kids, are like, well, why should I care about education? And so just my quick thing of why you should totally care about this is, as a community member, if you want people to be well educated, and if you want to have a voice in how education is happening, especially on the public level, this is where your voice gets heard. So you can't make fun of the lowest demographic and not be voting in the education of the demographics. But that's my humble opinion on it. But yeah, so what do you have on your first one?
My first one, Education Service District, the Multnomah Education Service District Director Position 2 at Large. That gives us the incumbent Helen Ying facing off against the wonderful Leo Morley. When I read his, I knew him, even though Helen Ying was endorsed by the wonderful Ted Wheeler, I would still probably have to vote for her because Leo says his occupation is landlord. And in this town, that makes me immediately suspicious, thanks to, one, how powerful the landlords, unnecessarily powerful the landlords are in this town, and two, how routinely they, will do whatever they can to, screw their tenants. That is not to say that this guy is a bad landlord. I don't know what type of landlord he is, so it's not a comment on him personally. That just makes me suspicious. Number two, he's running for an education board. And now in these packets that they give you, the information that you see with the candidate is provided by the candidate's team.
Yes, I've pointed out that this is basically the resume. This is our version of the resume we get. They put it together. Nobody puts it together unless they pay somebody to. Like I could pay somebody to make a resume for me if I wanted. But that's the first thing I honestly noticed is, I had said that in our election when we talked about it before. I am drawn to a resume that is a little bit more resume-y, and you look at Helen Ying, and she's got bullet points. She's got quotes from people like, backing her. She's got a clear occupational background that makes sense for working in education. Because that's the other thing to look at. Like, just because somebody's main occupation is retired landlord, it doesn't mean they didn't go and get different occupational background, or, maybe they volunteered a lot in some special committees and things. I'm not seeing that on Leo's stuff, so that's where my skepticals go up. But I think I see what something that we had joked about earlier that I think you're dying to get to for this education person.
Yes, this guy who wants to replace Helen Ying as the Multnomah Education Service District, the Director at Large for Position 2. The last thing he wrote is, school need to be now.
Yes, so attention to detail needed to be then, but school need to be now.
Yes, so Leo, you're not getting my vote. Because one, that, but two, school vouchers and charter schools, when people support that usually ends up being a dog whistle to defund public schools. Now, to be clear, that does not mean that there are that all charter schools are bad. There are definitely good ones out there, but there needs to be consistent funding for public education in this country because, as you pointed out, it routinely doesn't, especially for the poorer parts of the country or the minority parts of the country. If you're a rich white person, upper middle class white person, you're either going to get good education at a richer public school that has a bigger budget, or more than likely your parents are going to be like homeschooling you or sending you to a private school, and even then that screws the poor kids out there. So I'm always suspicious about that because, again, the people that say that are not necessarily looking for a good solution that will positively affect everybody. They just want to save some money on their property taxes because routinely routinely the budgets for schools come from property taxes, and when you got a guy like a landlord who I'm sure doesn't like paying any sort of property taxes at all, it's clear reading this that he has no history in education whatsoever. He's simply doing it so he doesn't have to pay taxes, and other people in his position don't have to pay higher taxes.
Yeah, it even says prior governmental experience, none. I mean, granted, I don't know this man on a personal level, and I know I had discussed with you just kind of privately, I've had a little bit of a different experience with voucher programs. Now, granted, does that mean I've spent a lot of time looking into, are they overall the best thing since sliced bread? Would they be like a good fix for kind of the education system? No, I haven't done that much research.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially now, having it pointed out, wait a second, he's got no governmental background. He's a retired landlord, and I actually didn't know that public school funding came from property tax. So that's actually kind of an interesting thing to put together with that one.
Yeah. So that is there. So like I said, Helen Ying, even though she is endorsed by the wonderful Ted Wheeler, she's already in that position. She has the experience, and to be clear, I want to make it clear. I don't think a person necessarily has to have government experience to get into a certain position. Look at Barack Obama, for instance. He didn't have much time in the Senate before he ran for president and ultimately won. And, his presidency wasn't perfect, but I think it went, relatively okay, if you ask me. So I don't think prior government experience is necessarily something you should look for, but you would think that there would be some form of comparable experience in his regular work that related to education, and I'm just not seeing it. Yeah. It's like he worked in the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Portland Medical Center. He was a healthcare aide staff at their escort division, which is great. We need more people like that. But how does that apply towards the position he's going for? So, bye, Leo. You're gone.
Probably not getting my vote either. Granted, I will probably sit with this as I do when I vote from home, because I've already gotten my ballots. That happened today too. So I'll get to sit down. Yep. See, Tim's just filling his out now. That's what we could be doing, is just voting together and just having a live voting thing. Maybe we should do that on November times when we're voting all at the same time. That could be a fun twist on it. Tim and Tracy vote.
Why not? That would be a good way to, encourage people, and it allows us to talk out the issues, so we're not making a decision based on this person bad because they're bad, or something.
This person looks like that uncle I didn't like. I don't actually know why people pick what they pick sometimes. But what is your next one? Do you have director position 3?
The next one I have is the Portland School District Director Zone 4.
Dang it, because I was hoping you had position 3 Zone 2, because...
Are you talking about Mary Botkin?
I am, because that's what I was like, oh my gosh, she kind of looks like Mrs. Doubtfire, a little bit younger than what they made her look to be. In the movie, she totally reminded me of Mrs. Doubtfire for just a second flipping through this. In a good way. I'm not saying that to be mean at all. I love Mrs. Doubtfire, and I even thought the makeup they did, that he looked like a very sweet woman. He did. That was they did a good job. It was V. Neal. Come on. She doesn't fuck around with a look. So yeah, I was like, that totally caught my eye flipping through. I was like, is that Mrs. Doubtfire?
It kind of looks like, do you remember Total Recall when Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived on Mars, and it was a woman arrived on Mars, but then she started stuttering, and then pulls her head off, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then he throws the head to somebody, and then it's the person holding it is looking at it, and then you see the head's eyes open, and the woman goes, "Get ready for a surprise," and then it explodes. Looks kind of like that.
I have not seen that movie, but it is kind of funny that she's reminding us both of things we've seen in entertainment. That's pretty great.
What kind of Americans are we? Just goofing, opening it up just to goof on people? But
no. know. That's why I wanted to be so clear, like not goofing. It just really got my attention for a second because that's one of those movies that it's a very endearing movie for me. Like it brings back like some good memories. You know, Robin Williams kind of reminded me of my dad when I was a kid. And, you know, no secret, I went through a divorce with my parents and it wasn't pleasant. So I mean that with all of the love in the world, Mary Botkin. If you have somehow heard of our podcast and listened to this, just know I say that from a place of love.
And I love Total Recall, so I swear I was not being that much of a jackass. But if you see me and you want to kick me in the nuts, you get one free shot. How about that?
There we go. But yeah, so really with some of this voting stuff, like a lot of what I look for is, are they already currently, like, it doesn't point it out as well. I think I've noticed in this one, because I felt like the November one, it actually said like recumbent, like if they were, you know, trying to get to stay on. But either we have no recumbents or they're not marking it as well as they did.
Yeah, and who knows? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the voting type of procedures for this, so it may be a situation to where they don't necessarily have an incumbents, that it's a fresh elections each time or something like that. But you know, same people would still get voted in or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It's not showing that even on the previous page, because it's stating re-elect, and that's the only indication that I have for Helen Ying that she, you know, is currently in that position. It does not say incumbent next to her name.
Yeah. So, yeah, it looks like they're not marking it for this special election. But, yeah, it's kind of interesting, like, the difference in endorsements. So, we've got Mary Botkin and Walt Karstein.
Mm-hmm.
At least I don't – what's interesting, intellectual property attorney. I always find it interesting when they also bring up, like, they're a parent, like, how many kids they have. But I guess, like, that's supposed to imply that, I guess, they care more because they've got kids in the system. And, see, that's just something that doesn't sell to me, because I care a lot about the school system even before, like, I had stepkids in my life. I do not have any biological children, just in case anybody was ever curious about that one. I don't have any. But, you know, I've got a pretty big heart and I care a lot about our education system. So that kind of stuff, like, always, like, gets my attention, but it's not always a good thing for me because it's like, why do you feel the need to tell me that you have kids? Like, do you have other things to stand on?
Yeah, well, the thing the president mentioned in his speech on Wednesday was the fact that we are not funding education like other countries are. You know, we are quickly falling behind, while other companies like Japan, China, you know, Germany are far exceeding us in terms of students because those countries properly invest in their education systems. This is not money that is being thrown away here. We're talking about investing our kids. And even if you don't have any kids, investing in education is a positive thing for not only your local community, but on state and national levels as well, because that's more kids that are going to get, you know, a chance at getting better jobs and being better citizens in society. You know,
exactly.
I mean, yeah,
like that's kind of my point. We should care about this. Like, whether you've got kids that are going to be in the education system or not, you should totally care. An opinion I never mind sharing is if I ever wound up raising a child, may I have one, adopt one, whatever that happens, I don't intend on sending them to public school.
Yeah. The reason
what are you looking at?
There's a squirrel that has become fascinated with me, and right outside my window is a fence to the neighbor's yard, and right now the squirrel's just sitting there, like, eating a nut, just kind of looking at me. And like earlier,
intimidation, stare down. Just, yeah, didn't you send like an apple or talk about like him? You had a video or something of him eating like an apple core or something, right? Just
no, it's the same squirrel, but it was a flower from the neighbor's tree that he was just sitting there eating while looking at the window. He knows that that humans are in here, and it's very, very clearly a he, because the ladies, I'm sure, you know, you can see his nutsack, you know.
Oh, the nuts on that squirrel. That squirrel is packing some nuts for winter, is what Tim is saying. No, that's kind of how he figured out that Kuko was a boy. It's like, oh, he's sitting on the log. Yep, that's definitely behind him with his tail up. Kuko is a dude.
But yeah, he is gone now. But like I was saying, for mine, I had the Portland School District Director Zone 4, and that's Brooklyn Sherman, Herman Green, and Margot Logan. You're supposed to vote for one of them. Margot, it looks like, has some previous government government experience, as well as both Brooklyn and Herman. Herman, it looks like, is a pastor, senior pastor of Abundant Life Church. Don't know the politics of that particular church. In this town, more than likely, I wouldn't be too concerned about it being like a follower of like Jerry Falwell or something like that. But you do got to. I think it is fair to question when religious figures get involved in politics. Because at the end of the day, you want them making the best choices for the people as a whole, even if that may be something that goes against their beliefs.
Yeah, and I don't have that one at all.
That would be on page M46. But as we were discussing beforehand, for like education stuff, it's kind of zoned similar to like representatives.
Yeah.
So it's just people for my area. That's who I would have to vote for. Now, who is on your list?
So are we talking about that director zone 4 thing? Because, man, there's like a lot of zone 4. I'm back on M19 and I've got position 4 zone 4. And the one that I wanted to talk about a little bit was just interesting because Jessica Arzate, I will apologize. I do attempt to try to say names that I'm not familiar with, but so sorry if I'm butchering that, Jessica. But yeah, I really find her interesting. Something had caught my eye was she wants to support trauma-informed practices and mental health support for students in school. And seeing things like that is what's going to get somebody like me, my attention in there, because that is something that is a reason I don't personally want to send a child that I would be raising to public school. I want to be so clear. I do not judge anybody who does send their kid. I just have what I feel a laundry list of my personal reasons why I wouldn't. But that definitely falls under them, is kind of just not being very trauma informed, and how sometimes the school experience can actually exacerbate trauma that kids experience. Especially if they do have a rough home life and then they're still getting bullied and picked on at school. It's just sometimes it can be a very crushing environment. So I love seeing stuff like that. And then you can see that they actually have a background working for an educational nonprofit. Meanwhile, I guess the one going against her, also has an educational nonprofit background and tutoring, but the occupation was a small business owner before it was listed. So that, just things to kind of, I guess, keep in mind as you go through this. Do you have Jessica Arzate and Gabriel Brait?
Negative.
So I get to care about that one. I don't know. That one pulls me. But, of course, when I actually sit here and vote, because, the Mr. Reverend and I will probably do pretty much what you and I are doing, except we've got the exact same ones.
Yeah. No, like for me, like the next one on mine is the Portland School District Director Zone 5, and that is on page M48. That's Pitt's Gary Hollins versus Daniel Rogers. Looks like they both have somewhat comparable, education experience as well. I'm assuming based on the people that are supporting him in the We Support Gary section that he is, I'm assuming he may be the incumbent on here, and probably someone I would go for here too, because some of the organizations that do support him, like the NAACP, obviously in Portland, of all places, Portland needs all the support it can for its minority communities. So, I think I would definitely go for him there. But who do you have next?
I've got Gary Hollins and Daniel Rogers too. I just wanted to say they both have some smiles, man. They got excellent smiles for their photos. I'd gladly go up and shake either of their hands. But Gary's got kind of an impressive support behind him. Like, the thing that catches my eye is anything with, what did I just see it? Yeah, Planned Parenthood, PAC of Oregon, Yeah. I like Planned Parenthood. Oh my God, nobody kill me, please. Because they actually do a lot with cancer prevention. And I really hope that if you've gotten anything out of awareness of Planned Parenthood, that's the thing, that if you disagree with anything else they do, which is in the point percentages, I think, of what they actually offer would be the abortion services.
Yeah.
But how much cancer screening, STD screening help, as well as treatment, Like they help with a lot of that. So that's something that I try to keep an eye out for when I see that name.
Yeah, back in high school, I actually technically worked for Planned Parenthood. They had, I don't know if it's still around, but they had a program to where they would hire high school students to show up at Planned Parenthood for a couple of hours a day after school to just learn about like sex ed stuff and everything that Planned Parenthood does, and that was a very eye-opening experience and something I was very glad to be a part of. Now, I was going to say with Gary here, he does have a bitchin' Van Dyke, and as someone who is kind of sporting one right now, and who had the professor actually bought me like a beard, like a grooming kit, and it's got like this brush with like boar's hair on it that I've been brushing.
Oh, yeah, boar brush. I actually use that because, side note to anybody else who does fantasy colors, washing your hair is just, it strips it all out, and that's what makes it all dull. But if you trade it out and you don't have to wash it every time, but you can use a boar brush and dry brush your hair out to help keep it clean so that you don't have to wash it all the time. But yeah, that's really great, and it can keep that itchiness.
Oh, it took care of it big time, because that's probably why because I never had a brush like that before, and anytime in the past where I would grow the Van Dyke, because of my face with facial hair, this is really the only type of facial hair I am comfortable with. I feel this is the only thing that grows in, but in the past it would be like I would let it grow for a couple of months, and then it would just get too itchy, and then I would shave it, but now, using like the beard balm or the beard oil along with the brush and everything like that, and even fancy scissors too.
Yeah, it's like, damn it, the hipsters had something right, and it was beard maintenance.
Yeah, basically. But okay, what do you have next on your ballot?
So I do have Director's Zone 6 on mine between Julia Brim Edwards and Matthew Max Margolis. Is that who you've got too?
And Libby Glenn.
Oh, Libby Glenn, is that the next page? Oh, yep, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Libby. They didn't have Libby on the label for me. It was on another page.
Yeah.
So, I do love, like, when people have prior government experience, NA. Like, let's just put not applicable under there. Like, instead of leaving it blank, they just put NA. I just think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, his job, we're talking to Matthew Max Margolis. He's a reading tutor. His present occupation too is a father. Crime prevention program administrator for Southeast Portland, fine, I guess, and a couple of other things. But this guy appears to be running just as more of a vanity project than anything else. I don't know if he has any sort of a legitimate chance whatsoever compared to like someone to just his left there, Julia Brim Edwards. And it's like, you do want to be open to someone that may not have had a ton of government experience, but again, presentation's everything. This information that we're reading is provided by the candidates themselves, and when it looks like it's something they put together within like 5 minutes or less on Microsoft Word and didn't properly format it or anything, or put any effort into making it look good, why would I be impressed by you? Why would I want to spend any time like trying to find your website or something like that? I mean,
yep. Because, I mean, it's just the same as if I were to put in a resume at a job, and if I put my resume and it looked like, more like Max or Libby's, where it's just a few paragraphs and there's nothing to really drag your attention to why my resume deserves your attention, it's really hard to take my eye away from Julia's. So I guess if there's anybody out there considering running, because most of these, like, one of my friends is running for one of the educational slots, not in one that I can vote for because he lives in a totally different area. But like, yeah, he's a really great guy, and I know he's worked with some really great stuff, and he's just somebody that I know. So on the off chance that you ever decide to run for one of these things, like, maybe consider thinking of it like a resume and putting it together really well, because I want to vote for Julia just based on how she's got things laid out. Granted, of course, I'm going to sit here and go through it before I ever put pen to paper. But I think she might be the current one, but she's a senior director at Nike, but a school volunteer.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I wouldn't recommend basing your potential vote by just what you read here. Take some time to go to their website, put it out to social media as well. Talk to your friends and see if they. I mean, because you'd be surprised at the people that are active in keeping track in what's happening in government. If you got friends that have kids and actively go to school, and if they're a part of stuff like the PTA, find out their opinion. More than likely, they know these people or know of their work. So do a deeper dive. That doesn't hurt anybody, and don't just I mean, it's like I know I was flippant on a couple of them, but that was admittedly me being flippant, just trying to bring the joke for the sake of being a joke. I would not base my opinion. I wouldn't not vote for somebody just because they look like they were in Total Recall once.
Right, exactly. And it's like I also don't want to overlook somebody who just maybe doesn't have resume writing experience, or in this case, writing your little stump speech, I guess, so to speak, is what this is supposed to replace, right? Because these people don't go around and advocate for themselves or, go and give speeches and stuff. This is how you learn about them. Yeah. So, if you've got a minute, I mean, that's kind of the beauty about having this ballot at home is I can have my computer right here and give myself all of the supplemental information that I could possibly want. So if I go through Julia Brim Edwards, I'm like, man, I am just really not sold. Like once I actually get into this and read it, but it's like, man, I am kind of interested in some of this background because, hey, there is nothing wrong with your primary occupation being a parent. Because that actually, here's where I will put that this example actually makes sense when I'm looking at this, because it's saying like, hey, I haven't not done anything these last handful of years, like 2008 to present. If you're looking at all of this stuff, you're like, wow, what have you been doing? Just like with a resume, or just like when you're filling out a job app, when you have a gap in work, it can look kind of weird. So I'm actually going to support this man talking about him being a father in this situation. To me, it's funny when you have all of this background and then you still throw it in, oh, I'm a parent of like 8 kids. I mean, granted, I haven't seen anything like Octomom numbers, but like this one, it actually kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. Yeah. I just realized like I kind of wanted, I don't know why, like looking at it again, I wanted to clarify like, like that one, that actually kind of makes sense.
Yep. Do you have anything else on the front page of your ballot?
I don't.
Okay, on the back page of my ballot, I just have one city measure, City Measure 26-221. That would be a 5-year levy. Oregon Historical Society Library Museum Educational Programs. The question: shall the county renew a 5-year history museum library educational programs levy, maintain a 5-cent per $1,000 assessed value oversight beginning 2021. This measure renews current local option taxes. Basically, it's like, for instance, somebody that owned a home, if it was assessed at $200,000, they'd be paying $10 a year, and that would go towards stuff like education programs, free admission for school groups and Multnomah County residents of these organizations, preservation of important Oregon treasures and artifacts. You want to protect your history. It supports 4 county historical societies: the Fairview Rockwood Wilkes Historical Society, the Gresham Historical Society, the Troutdale Historical Society, and the Crown Point Country Historical Society. I didn't stutter. Yeah. And OHS will continue to build on its efforts to provide exhibits and services that reflect the diverse histories of our region and engage all parts of our county. I have no problem supporting that. Education is not a bad thing. I could still see somebody that pays property taxes on a regular basis being upset at any sort of raise in that tax. But again, this is not money that the government's taking just to put in their pockets. And we got to think of taxes as just investments. If we're not investing our tax money into our infrastructure, into our education system in this country, we're going to have some problems. And
And I likely something I'm going to be in favor for. But I do want to point out that this, as well as the other measures, so if you do, there's a second measure that depending on where you're at, it could end up on your ballot. It doesn't look like it's on mine either. That's measure 5285. But the thing that both of these measures have in common is, if you notice, there are only arguments in favor. Now, this could be because there's just legitimately nobody actively arguing against it. But personally, my choice is, when I see that, I still want to go up and look this up and look more into it. Just because if you're only getting the arguments in favor and you're only getting the pitch written by the people who proposed it, then you're only getting that one-sided story. And that's the only thing that makes me a little bummed when that happens. Granted, this might be totally one of those situations like, yeah, because there's really not bad to say about it. But I would encourage that when you see stuff like that, don't be scared to go and look up and see what's all involved in the bill. You might find something that says, oh, it actually says like some of this money is going to kicking orphans or whatever. Like, it obviously wouldn't, I'm being hyperbolic, but you can make those determinations just because it doesn't say it in here. So that's the only thing that piqued my interest about the measure ballots on this special election, is I definitely will be spending some time looking at them just to make sure fully what I'm voting in favor for.
And yeah, that is very much good advice there too, because the big argument that conservatives have had against progressives ever since the Reagan era on is that liberals, progressives love to throw money at things with no accountability whatsoever. They think they can just solve everything with money, and one, not true, but two, it's not a bad thing to want to find out where the money is going to be used, because think about how many government programs on federal, state, or local levels you've heard of where lots of money has been wasted, like on $100 toilet seats or something like that. Government waste affects everybody, and I think looking to see where the money goes is not a bad thing to do at all. Now, again, I'm still probably going to be inclined to support this, but yeah, to your point, if there was something in there that was questionable in terms of where the money went, then yeah, blindly voting for something just because it says all the right words in the ballot without taking the time to study it, that would be a big fail.
Exactly. And yeah, to me, it's really clear, like, you don't have to necessarily Nat's ass look up everything, right? But for me, one of those no-brainers is, if you're all against arguments are in there and you have no favorable arguments, and if there's all favorable and no against, that's where I personally feel just extra encouraged to go and make sure and read, because that's the other rub with a special election is, with less people being aware of it, you're going to suffer in that sense of you're not getting necessarily the full argument for or against something. So that is something that you kind of pay for in the sense with these. But fortunately, it's not usually measure after measure after measure. It's maybe one or two things. So it's not super exhaustive to look into it for a second.
Yeah, and routinely in the past, for elections like this, it is usually much, much older conservative people that are voting, and they routinely don't necessarily vote to support stuff like this. So if you want that change, this is one thing you can do to actually contribute towards that change. Definitive steps here. So anything else about this election you want to bring up?
No, other than just if you got the voters pamphlet, and just take a second, try to go through it, and if you feel confident in voting, vote. If you're not going to care enough to actually look into it, maybe let this one pass. But I hope you guys maybe care a little bit more about these things. I'm really hoping that what we have experienced as a country has taught us that we need to care for these little things too, because there could have easily been some other special election seat in here that otherwise you might not have known about. And if you don't get these things, if you can find anything from your preferably, a secure, a trusted site where your state or your county or whatever puts up announcements about special elections, see if you can subscribe to it. There's a lot of little tools out there right now that we can use to try to keep our finger on the pulse of things and help make some of these small changes. Granted, it doesn't look like, nobody in the Senate randomly just quit or anything bad happened and then we're, trying to vote for the Senate or the House or something. Nothing like that in this one. No such drama. But it's still a smart thing to keep your finger on the pulse of it.
And yeah, especially with education here, this is an investment on your future. This is it could be involve taxes in some way in terms of like property taxes and whatnot. But if we don't invest properly in education, this little experiment called America could get a little rougher than it currently is. So vote, and vote again.
Yep. Because the worst thing that can happen is to really just regress back to being convinced that voting can't ever work. I'm not saying it has solved everything to date, obviously, but I don't think I'm ready to throw it away and go back to where we have to have, constant violent protests in order to get things to change. I would really like to encourage people to get your voice in here where we can. By all means, still protest, practice your freedom of speech, practice getting out there and getting messages out there. I mean, hey, like I advocate for awareness on parental alienation. There's other people that advocate on other forms of child abuse, and there's people that advocate for definitely Black Lives Matter. Oh my God, I want those people to advocate for that. Mm-hmm. But get your awareness out there and get informed and get involved.
Exactly. And keep on listening to Friends Talking Nerdy. This coming Wednesday, we are going to have our first date night double episode, the professor and I. We're going to be talking about 2 albums, one from a group called Pairs. It's a self-titled album called Pairs. And we'll also be talking about the album called The Ride from a group called Bad Cop, Bad Cop. Now, because we have switched our podcast host from Simplecast to Anchor, as I've mentioned before, we're going to have the ability of actually having music from these bands in this episode when we talk about it, which is going to be really cool, to kind of break things up so you don't have to hear us rambling on about the music all the time. You'll actually be able to judge for yourself whether you like it. Now, one thing to keep in mind for that is that because Anchor allows this, because they are owned by Spotify, this Wednesday's episode is going to be a Spotify exclusive episode. Because music is going to be attached legally, it can only be played on Spotify so that the musicians are able to get their royalties properly. But this coming Wednesday, you'll be able to hear that episode. Next Saturday, of course, we will be back here, same Friends Talking Nerdy time, same Friends Talking Nerdy channel.
See, now you can tell when I'm vacuuming because now we know what it looks like when I'm like getting them.
Yeah, like fucking ants, fuck you.
I've got to go empty my vessel soon, so I will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and I look forward to having less ants.
All right, so go free those prisoners, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.